Hello! Today we're going to talk about the secret DC neighborhood that you've probably never heard of and didn't know existed. Now, you might hear people refer to it as Georgetown. They might refer to it as Glover Park. You may even hear people call it Upper Georgetown. I don't actually think Upper Georgetown's a real thing, you guys. Today I am going to tell you about the 4 square blocks of Burleith. So, let's dive right in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
First up is location. So where is Burleith? Well, it's a very, very small neighborhood with the northern boundary at the Whitehaven Parkway. The eastern boundary is at 35th Street. The southern boundary is Reservoir Road. And the western boundary is Glover Archbald Park. In the late 1800s, the Heidekoper family owned this tract of land before selling it to developers Shannon and Lux. They hired architects then to turn it into the community that we know now. The original marketing material from the 1920s is actually kind of amazing, and it's available online. You have to dig a little bit for it, but fascinating walk down the history of 100 so years ago when they were creating Burleith. They said that the homes here were designed for, quote, a buyer of moderate means, but of more than ordinary good taste, with a kitchen to delight the housewife. That's so exciting. I love it. Also included in Burleith is a neighborhood called Hillendale. Hillendale is a gated community set on 42 acres with 268 homes, and they were built throughout the 1980s. So Hillendale actually has its own pool, tennis courts, clubhouse, and playground. Like I said, it's gated. It keeps the likes of people like me out. So I don't have a ton of video to show you about Hillendale, but I do have a lot in the neighborhood. All right, let's talk about real estate because that's what the most important thing is, and that's all why we're here. So what you are going to find in Burleith is row homes. Many, many row homes. That's pretty much all that's here. Do they have condos? They do not. Do they have single-family detached homes? No. They only have row homes. You can get a couple single-family homes in the back of Hillendale, but like I said, gated, off limits, not able for me to access to show you what it looks like. Now, the earliest homes that were built here were built in 1915, but the bulk of the building in Burleith actually occurred between 1924 to 1928. This makes complete sense with what we know about the development of Georgetown. To the south, they've got homes that actually predate the 1900s. We also have Glover Park that's just to the north, and the development there started in the 1930s. So Georgetown was the first area developed in DC, and the movement essentially expanded north from there. Makes perfect sense. Now, Burleith homes historically had a bit of a smaller footprint from the surrounding neighborhoods. They were deeper lots here, so they had more of a front yard. They had slate mansard roofs, and they were usually around 1,300 to 1,400 of finished square feet above ground. And then there was a lower level as well. Now, the homes in Burleith always sold for a slight premium over Glover Park, even though they are not as pricey as Georgetown. And this was always a mystery to me because I would argue at least about 10, 12, 15 years ago, the facades of many of these homes, they just looked run down to me. They didn't, the mansard roofs and the stone fronts, like they just didn't wear well over time, and they didn't kind of stand up to time in a way, and they ended up really kind of looking just a little bit sad in some cases. Now, Glover Park was just a few streets away. It had larger houses, and it was kind of hard to understand, all right, why would somebody sort of pick Burleith over Glover Park when they are so close to each other? Burleith houses also tended to rent very well too. So generally what I can tell you about this mystery is that up until a few years ago, Burleith had a lot of residents who had either grown up here and inherited the home from their parents, or they'd been in the home for many decades and they just, decided to age in place. Sometimes neighborhoods change their personality and make up in a few years, but often it takes decades. So when I was digging around for more information on Burleith, I actually found a document from many, many, many decades ago, like 7 decades ago, mid-1900s. And they said that the best proof that Burleith has a permanent attraction for its residents lies in the fact that the children of Burleithians often make their home here. Okay, so that did stand the test of time, and that did continue to be for a very, very long time up until almost present day. So because these homes have a small footprint, though, and because many did kind of seem to be a little bit worn looking from the outside, things did start changing a few years ago. Enter the pop-up. The pop-up in DC has a reputation for being a disgraceful atrocity on the landscape of the city's architecture. When done properly, they can be okay. When done improperly, they are a despicable eyesore for the whole entire neighborhood. So, because row homes are attached to another row home, typically on the other side, on both sides, they don't always lend themselves well to being either torn down or expanded, right? Because you've got just a certain amount of area on the lot that you can utilize, and maybe you can put a porch or something and close the porch in, but you're not going to get a ton of square footage on the plot of land that you've got. So what do? You can pop up. Okay, you can pop up another level. Now, when the first few pop-ups happened in Burleith, it seemed that there was a lot of contempt for them. And I'm just kind of gleaning this from the various message boards and neighborhood chatter, right? Truth be told, some of them just weren't done well. But as time has passed and this well-located neighborhood has attracted a lot of development, there are many, many pop-ups here. As the neighborhood changes, you're going to see them mixed in with the original homes. Some of the homes are very modern and look nothing like the old homes at all. Others are more of a craftsman style. The new generation of buyers can now have a home in Burleith that gives them the square footage they need with the lifestyle and location that they want. They also have the prices to go with it. In the last year alone, 41 homes sold in Burleith. The lowest price, $750,000. Total gut job on that house. The highest price was $4.1 million. That was inside the gates of Hillendale. Now, outside of Hillendale and Burleith, the highest price was $3.23 million. So still quite a bit of money. Very, very spendy here. And that was for a home that was popped up. Now, the average price of the homes that sell here is $1.87 million. That's for the last 365 days. The median price is $1.725 million. Now, let's talk for a quick second about the 1955 history of Burleith document. Quote, in years past, many splendidly designed houses in Georgetown were spoiled by their exteriors being changed. It has been necessary to spend much time and money in recent years to restore these houses to their original condition. Lest we of Burleith become too smug, we should remember that these mutations could happen in time to the houses of Burleith. Well, it has. Here we are. We are in Pop-Upville here. All right, so who lives in Burleith? Well, there's a huge mix of people here. I know some longtime families who are in homes that they either grew up in or parents left to them and they've come back to the area. There are empty nesters. There's a lot of medical staff who work at Georgetown University Hospital. There are families, there are students. There are all walks of life here. The Burleith Citizens Association works really hard to ensure that there's a very nice prevailing sense of community here as well. Now, let's do a fun fact. In 1983, the Dean of Student Affairs and the head of the Burleith Citizens Association wrote a letter to the students in the neighborhood. This was because the Georgetown students who were living in Burleith were a little bit noisy. They were in the letter, they asked them to keep their blaring music down, especially at 3 a.m. At current prices of real estate, it feels safe to say that these homes are no longer a magnet for undergrads. I feel like it's a lot more grad students and also residents and students at the hospital. UnFun Fact, when you are approaching Burleith from Glover Park and you're headed south on 37th Street, there is a stop sign at 37th Street and Whitehaven Parkway. For close to a decade, there was a defunct stop sign camera there, which didn't work. One day, without warning, they decided to put this sucker back into service, and every single car was getting tickets. It was so sensitive that if you didn't stop for like a full 3 to 5 seconds, bam! Flash, flash. Actually, you didn't even really see the flash because it was like very quietly doing it in there. And then you got a ticket in the mail. People reacted. They did not react well. So first, the camera was actually knocked over. It was just a freestanding camera that was sitting there on a base. People were just going by and knocking it over. That happened several times. City would come out, they'd put it back up, and somebody decided to glue like a brochure or something over it. They defaced the front of it so that the camera wouldn't be able to see anything. City came out and fixed that too. After several more attempts to murder that camera, the city came out and they lofted it onto a pole. The big outrage was that in 2 years, the camera generated more than $1.3 million in fines. Each ticket was $100. The math on that, 18 cars a day were getting ticketed going through that stop sign. All right, let's do some family and fun. Change gears for a second. So Burleith's location feels very much like an enclave in the city without having any actual businesses in the neighborhood. Hill and Dale, like I said, is truly a gated community, and it's like an enclave in the city. And that really was what it was created for. Was the Archibald family wanted it to be an enclave. They wanted it to remain like these 42 acres of very idyllic space, which it still is. So adjacent neighbors to Burleith and Hill and Dale include Georgetown University Hospital across Reservoir Road, and just behind that, or south of that, heading down toward the Potomac River, is Georgetown University. To the west of Hill and Dale is the Embassy of France. Between Glover Park and Burleith, you have Glover Archibald Park, which has trails that lead to very different neighborhoods to the west and north. There is an open park in the middle where you'll often find people and their dogs, even though there are neighborhood rumblings that it's not an approved off-leash park. And people do walk through there on their commutes on foot, and they don't love being approached by dogs and all of that. South of Burleith, you have Georgetown with all the shops and all the dining spots. You've got Trader Joe's and Safeway, which are right on Wisconsin Avenue, where 35th Street actually dead ends right there by Hardy Middle School. Now, for schools, the kids are going to go to Hyde Addison in Georgetown, Hardy Middle School, which is on the edge of Burleith, and then MacArthur High School, which is new as of the 23-24 school year. So that just went into existence on MacArthur Boulevard this current school year that we're in. Or we're about to finish up because we're in the spring of 2024. All right, let's finish this up with two final fun facts. In the 1890s, they used to bury dead horses at the end of 38th Street. In the mid-1900s, these alleys parallel to 38th and 39th Street were called the Hanging Gardens of Burleith, and there were flowers and shrubs that would last through all of the seasons. Another fun fact, in the 1950s, 35th Street was called Incubator Row because so many babies and children were living in the houses there that, I don't know, they just said there were so many babies, they called it Incubator Row, which I think is actually hilarious because, we don't grow in incubators. But anyway, it's almost like the more things change, the more they stay the same. This is a very appealing neighborhood for basically all walks of life, right? People really like it here. It's very convenient to everything. It's quiet, it's idyllic, and it's set apart from the other, busyness and congestion of the rest of the city. So that's Burleith. If you have any questions about that, I live very close to it and I know a lot about it, and my contact info is coming next.